and thank you so much for joining us. I think it's really quite exciting, to be honest, because sometimes I think with myself and you, Hakimah, we've this whole time that this has all happened, we've just really had each other. We've had each other to kind of bounce off of and have these discussions with. And sometimes we kind of sit there, don't we? And we go, okay, well, that was really beneficial. That conversation was really beneficial, some great points. And you think, well, we need to kind of get it out there. We need to get it out there because a lot of people who we speak to, they tend to have a lot of questions, right? So I think, sorry, go ahead.
100%, they have many questions.
So I'm hoping that today, you know, it's obviously we're just going to hit on a bit of a summary of everything that's been happening and keep it quite light. And if there's anything specific that anybody wants to have a conversation with us about or wants to do a very small, you know, a small short discussion with us, then inshallah we can arrange it. But that was what I was hoping we could do today.
Fantastic. Yes. I have long felt like the village nutter, and I'm so thankful that what 2020 has done is it's brought out the rest of the nutters in the community as well, alhamdulillah. And I don't feel so much alone in my conspiratorial madness. So this is what I'm really thankful about. I'm really thankful that there's people generally in the world, more people are waking up to the fact that this society and our government and our medical system and our generally our life experience is not what it seems to be on the surface. And lots of people are questioning it, and lots of people are seeing the discrepancies in what we're told the reality is and the reality as you actually experience it. And I'm really thankful that people are open to this, and I'm really happy that lots of people have been opened up, and lots of people have not. Some people have been there already, and they joined in the discussion saying, yes, I've known this for years too, it's just I didn't have anybody else to speak to about it. And this is why I was really grateful, Aisha, that you saw everything very clearly as well. It was very clear to you when this virus happened, and when we first saw it back in February, it was clear to us both, you know, you because of your medical understanding of the, you know, the pharmaceutical industry and real health, and me because just my general years of distrusting authority or establishment. It was very clear to both of us that the virus wasn't a pandemic or a real threat, or it wasn't a plague. And so the question then became, what is actually going on? And alhamdulillah, it was such a blessing to have you, Aisha, to bounce off of. I'm very thankful for you. And I'm also very thankful for lots of members of the community, Muslims as well, that are coming out of the woodwork saying, yes, alhamdulillah, I see that too.
No, definitely, I agree with you there, alhamdulillah. But however, I still feel that there are not enough people coming out. I think it's because when I think back to February and I started calling it out very, very clearly, I didn't mince my words, and people who follow my statuses or who converse with me and see what kind of information I post, they know which side of the fence I sit on. I do not hide it. I do not back down. I'm just, alhamdulillah, I feel it's very, very important for us to be able to speak our truth, no matter how unpopular you would get. And I have been very unpopular, very unpopular. I've had a lot of backlash. I've had a lot of people who've stopped conversing with me or connecting with me, which is sad, but I don't hold it against them. Alhamdulillah. I just think to myself, okay, it's been very, very stressful. There's been a lot of fear. There's been a lot of confusion. It's a lot of kind of, you know, people have to unlearn methods of how they gain their information. And if you're like us who don't really subscribe to the mainstream methods, of getting our information, which is the news and the media and the newspapers. I can't remember the last time I purchased a newspaper or even opened one. You know, for me, newspaper is as good as getting my kids to use it to model with. Not even that sometimes.
Toilet
You know?
paper.
Yeah,
It's toilet paper.
pretty much. So, you know, but I have been very grateful for those few, even the ones who don't want to come out and say, look, I agree with you, but the ones who said, you know what, let me listen to what you're saying and let me do my own research. Let's see what's going on. Okay, I want to be quiet. I haven't quite made up my mind, but let's see.
Yes. Well, the main, if you were to listen to the mainstream media, you would be driven by emotions into fear and panic and stress. But these are just emotions and they're not logical thinking. And when you start to look at the reality of the situation, you use your, you know, your empirical senses, you use your senses and you look around you, or you even look at the documents, you see that people aren't dropping dead like flies left, right and center. And you see that people that say that they've had the coronavirus or they've tested positive, you see what symptoms do they have. Maybe some people have a cough, some people tell me that they had like a normal cold but then they lost their sense of smell and that was just it, you know. And then you look at the documents that are released, like the one on the government website on the 19th of March and the WHO website that very clearly downgraded coronavirus or COVID-19 down to just a common cold rather than a pandemic. It was downgraded. So even from the government's own documents, there wasn't anything to be fearful of. And yet they created such a media storm that it became emotional. Everybody has so much emotion attached to it. So when you try to speak to somebody about it logically, they react back with emotion. They react back trying to guilt trip you, saying, oh, but you know, all these people have died. Don't you care about all the people that have died? And they reply back with their fear. And it's being able to transcend that fear and not to get caught up in it. That's where the power lies.
Yeah, but that's where I've struggled, because you can bring as many facts as you want. You can bring as many, you know, arguments against it, what's being the narrative, what's being presented to us. But then when you've got people who, rightfully so, they're hurting, they're coming from a place of pain and suffering because they have lost somebody, and you can't reason, and you shouldn't really be trying to reason with people who are grieving. But when they come forward and you just have to back away. That's, I mean, you know, I know people who have lost elderly. We probably do, but we now know, look, was that because of coronavirus?
Or was it just because it was their time and they were, you know, they wouldn't have got through that flu season anyways?
Or was it because of what was going on with the ventilators?
Yes, that's the other one, is how many people were actually killed, you know, by the medical establishment. In America, still one of the leading causes of death is iatrogenic diseases, isn't it? Over prescription of medication.
Yeah, but also there was that doctor who came out and spoke about barrel trauma being caused by people being put on the ventilators when it wasn't the right course of action. They shouldn't have been put onto ventilators. So they were suffering a kind of high altitude sickness, barrel trauma. That's what he came out and said. And then you had, so I know of at least 2 elderly people who, you know, they had that whole farce where they had to go into the hospital. They weren't allowed to see their family. They were put onto ventilators and they were slipped into comas. They were being given drugs that they shouldn't have been being put on. For example, I think somebody I know who was being put on, who had kidney failure or a kidney disease, and they were being put on to, I think it was morphine. You're not supposed to take morphine. But anyhow, there was that whole kind of, when people are in, you know, losing parents, and I know this is going to be really hard for some to hear, you know, you're losing your parents suddenly. not being able to even see them because they're only allowing one member of the family to come in. And they've got to all of a sudden process the fact that their parent has passed away, or they're a grandparent or whoever. They haven't even been able to kind of get that closure. They've got to process that entire grief. You cannot, whatever you think about this whole virus, whatever you think is going on or know is going on, it's not appropriate for you to then start to try and convince that person that, you know what, your parent or your relative or your friend passed away from something other than this, and there was malintent, and you know there was something nefarious going on. You can't. It's wrong.
It would be impossible. Yeah, and heartless. You're right. It would be wrong, heartless, and impossible to get through to that person.
And at that point, you say to yourself, well, you know what? The right thing to do is to take a step back and let's see how it pans out. But you know, in that time, although it looked like I took a step back, I'm not sure about you, but whoever wanted to listen, you kind of said, well, okay, well, if you want to know what I'm thinking and you want to follow what I'm thinking, you know where to find me. And alhamdulillah, in that sense, yes, definitely, I felt that more and more people wanted to know. More and more people were questioning it.
This is it's the same thing if, for example, you wanted to give somebody dawah to Islam. I always found that you could never force dawah down somebody's throat. You can't just you know, that dawah where people go into Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park or something, and they try and argue people's way into believing in Allah and believing in the Quran. That never works, because the other person has their own ideology. They are closed to their set of beliefs. You're only able to give da'wah to people that are open to it, to people that are asking questions. And this is the same thing. This isn't da'wah, but you're only able to converse with people that are open, that have seen the inconsistencies themselves and are open to a different narrative. And this is those people that are in fear, or those people that are in grief. A lot of the times they are closed because they're wallowing in, you know, their emotion.
Yeah, 100%. So anyway, so we all know, well, I'd like to think I know what's going on, or I have a very good idea of what's going on. We definitely know that a lot more people in the UK are waking up. I mean, for example, you've got the protests that happened last weekend, and it was
amazing.
They were forced to show that in the mainstream news. They had to. How could you not? But of course it was misrepresented yet again. It wasn't just tens of thousands. I mean, Berlin, they was talking about millions, not tens of thousands.
They said it was 3 or 4 million in Berlin.
4.5 million.
Amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. Wow. You've got Poland.
And even with London, they said there's been reports to say that it reached a million. Or at least, you know, hundreds of thousands, and yet mainstream media has reported it as what, hundreds, thousands, 5,000. I saw 10,000.
Yeah, I mean, my very dear friend, very close friend, mashallah, alhamdulillah, Irim, who some of you heard from last night, we are very much kind of, we understand and respect each other's views, but we don't always agree. But for Irim to actually say to me, well, Aisha, I am shocked that mainstream media have not said anything about the demonstrations or the protests. That in itself is making me question the narrative.
Wow. People in the truther community, there was people in the truther community that didn't know that it was happening. They didn't know that it had happened, which was mind-blowing to me. I had conversations that following week with quite a few people that were saying to me, I didn't even know that this was going on. SubhanAllah, it had been covered up so well by the mainstream media that even the people that are usually awake to these things, you know, had been shut down. All the Facebook groups that had been closed down because of it. because they were promoting it. You know, the Twitter notifications that had been deleted. It's just unbelievable. Never mind its lack of coverage on mainstream media, and they twisted the narrative and turned it into, you know, just don't worry about it. It's just a few hundred or a few thousand of David Icke's crazy followers that, you know, have gathered. They're
Okay,
denying vaccine, denying the virus.
okay, so one thing that I've been feeling very, very disappointed about, okay, so March, when this whole thing kicked off and the whole kind of thing about masks and mask wearing, it kind of reached a crescendo, and then I felt that it had started to trail off. So I would go out and I would notice that less and less people were wearing masks, and it's almost as if you see people not wearing masks, and then all of a sudden it spikes. Something happens again in the media, and it's almost like a very you know, like an acute dose of fear that they you know, push out, and then it spikes again. So this is where I'm at the moment with the whole mask thing. You are 6 months into this whole thing that's going on, and people, I still don't feel enough people in our immediate local community are questioning enough. I just feel that it's a time of turn off your TV, you know, don't pick up that newspaper, start exercising common sense and asking questions. There's so much out there if you want to look. But where I'm at, I'm feeling a little bit disappointed at my community. I mean, you know, the incident that happened the other day when I walked into the dentist, and the dentist walked up to me and she said, "What's the problem?" And I said, "Look, I don't mean to sound like one of these really awkward parents, but I'm really not happy with what's going on. I don't like the fact that I'm being asked to get every single one of my children's temperature checked. And I'm not happy with this." And I really tried. And she said, she kind of sympathized. And then she said, "Look, it's not up to me. It's up to this dentist, and he owns the practice, and we'll ask him." And the dentist came back and said, no, he would not make an exception. And like I said, had it not been for the fact that my child was in pain and she was insisting on getting her tooth extracted, I would have walked out. And I thought about it, and I thought, you know what, you guys are being so kind of subservient almost. You should be quite happy that people in your immediate community, coming from an Asian background especially, I find that, my apologies if I offend anybody out there, but I find with the Asian community, you're very much all about following rules and following authority. And yeah, I'm not asking you guys to rebel, but come on, question things a little bit, stand up for yourselves a little bit, be brave. Yeah, and I'm standing there and I'm telling you.
This is the issue is with the Muslim community. I think we're very much conditioned to obeying and following orders, that we put that in places where it's not warranted or where it shouldn't be. We shouldn't obey and follow orders to the detriment of our own health and our own sanity and our children's mental health and their sanity and their freedoms, you know, and their freedom to live a lawful life in this land. There's nothing, you know, that there's nothing not following government guidelines. We're not even talking about laws. You know, not following government guidelines does not make you disobedient. Doesn't make you you're not doing something haram against the religion. It's not a law that has been put in place. And even if it had been put into law, it wouldn't even be a lawful law. So for Muslims to just constantly agree and follow, I don't want to use it because it's so overused, but like cattle, everything that is espouted by the government and then the media, even though, you know, one thing said one day and then the next day it's something completely contradictory. Like, for example, we're not going to have children wear masks in school, and the next day you have to, you know, your secondary school children have to wear masks in school, or we're not going to quarantine people coming from Spain. And then 24 hours later, the government's released guidelines saying that people coming from Spain need to be quarantined. But the point is that the fact that we don't even have the backbone to even to look at the inconsistencies and to think for ourselves and to implement a little bit of autonomy over our own lives, it's disappointing and saddening. And I believe that we should be stronger as a community.
Yes, but then there's the other thing. You've got the few who are quite brave, and they don't mind speaking out, and they want to speak their truth, and they want to actually speak out. And then the backlash that you get from your own community is sometimes harder to swallow. The backlash
100%.
that you get from sisters who at times they'll admire you for being quite strong in your character and for being out there, for being a little bit of a leader in whatever, you know, respect that is. But then the minute you start to question a narrative like this, you're shot down. And that's harder, I think. Much harder, because that's where you want that support more.
Well, I had an incident in school with one of the teachers. She's a fantastic teacher, and I do have a lot of respect and love for her. She's a very strong-minded woman. She's been a single mother for very many years, and she's very strong because of this. Allahu Alam, maybe she was strong before this, but I see the strength in her. She says herself that people claim that she has a bit of rujula, a bit of manliness in her, and she doesn't by the rules of the government guidelines, and yet at the same time they feel that they have to conform, because if they don't conform they fear, and again it's this fear, that they will bring the school into disrepute and that the school will have to close down. And yet if there was more of us standing our ground and speaking our truth, rather than, you know, being shut down by fear, these government guidelines wouldn't be able to hold any weight with anyone. So yes, you're right, definitely more from our community need to come out and need to see the truth, and that will hopefully give courage to others to step forward.
So sorry to cut you there, Hakimah. So I've had a sister ask in the text box, she's made a point. Some Muslims would argue that being a good Muslim, you have to obey the law of the land, and you can't rebel against the country that you live in, and that's what protects you. So what would you say about that?
Protects you. Okay, well, there's a few things to break down in this. Firstly, there's a few different levels. Muslims use the law of the land as a very blanket term. So with regards to coronavirus, a lot of it wasn't law. Wearing a mask in the shops is not law, it's a guideline. Social distancing is not a law, it's a guideline. And then even if you break down your terms of laws of the land, you then generally, when you mention law of the land, I would assume that you're talking about common law. The common law of the land, as we're in a Christian country, is actually laws laid down by God. And the rest of what they class as legality is not actually lawful. So yes, in the comment box it says here there is a difference between law and guideline, but there's also a difference between legal and lawful. And the legalities is what has been what we've been contracted into by the institution, by the corporation that is the United Kingdom, whereas the laws, the common law laws, are very plain and very simple. Is that you don't harm anyone, you don't take anyone else's property, and this is it. With regards to everything else, they're just acts and statutes that has been implemented by corporations, corporate law, and the United Kingdom as a corporate entity, not as the government.
And we've been conditioned. We've been conditioned to see that as the ultimate law, and we've been conditioned by fear.
And once again, 100%. But they tie this into being a Muslim. Being as a Muslim, you must obey all of these, not just the laws, the laws of the lands, but also all of these acts and statutes, and now the guidelines.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. I was on my bike the other day, and I don't wear a helmet. And a brother shouted out to me, and he said, "Sister, where's your helmet? You're breaking the law." I just chuckled a little. I said, "It's all right, brother. I've been doing it for a year now. No one stopped me." And it's the same with a seatbelt. It's a legality. It's not a law.
Yeah.
It's a legality, and if you know how to kind of work,
it's an act. It's a statute.
Yeah.
There's actually a fantastic video about child car seats on YouTube. There's this man, he runs, I forget his name. He has a book called Freakonomics, and it's basically about economics, but from an alternative perspective. And he shows that actual statistics for child car seats, so they're no more effective than just putting a child in a seatbelt. And yet we're so conditioned again by the brainwashing and the fear that we have to put our child in a car seat. It's the law. You will harm your child if you don't do it. But the reality of the situation, as shown by very simple studies, is not the same. Our brainwashing is very deep and is very broad, many levels, many subjects.
Okay, so basically what we can conclude from that is that once people understand that, you know what, you're not breaking any law when you're standing up for your rights.
100%.
You're not.
And in fact, what you're doing by buying into these acts and statutes and guidelines, you're not just you're paving the way for others to be oppressed and to be you're basically enforcing the brainwashing, enforcing the corporate law. You're adding to this.
Someone said the other day, the system, okay, that we live in. So if you break it down, you've got the medical industry, you've got the legal industry. The legal industry is not there to protect the people. It's there to protect them, their system.
It's a money-making machine as well. I mean, it's the amount of money that is laundered through the legal system is incredible. If it was there to protect us, then it wouldn't cost however many hundreds an hour to hire a lawyer to defend your case. It's ridiculous, the charges, the money that is laundered through that profession.
Yeah, and it's not just that, is it really? I mean, it's like yesterday, the conversation I had with Iram, the head teacher. She's one of, I want to say many, but when you're kind of sitting on the fence regarding the education system half the time, it takes for you to actually meet people like her that make you understand that there are teachers out there who have a heart and who are doing it for the right reasons. And I have lately, actually, in all fairness, been meeting teachers like this. But we've all known of teachers who they don't really, they're not connected. They're not connected with the children, and they don't last very long in the profession either. I know of teachers like this. They leave it. Their heart's not in it, and you think, well, why are you in this? Why are you in this profession? But this year, and I'm sure I speak for many, what's happened this year is not just woken people up, but it's actually got a lot of us, even those ones who consider ourselves awake, it's actually got a lot of us asking more questions, questioning the curriculum, questioning education, questioning the truth, what's actually being taught to the children, what has been taught to us growing up.
Yes. I'm in a bit of a moral quandary this year because I'm teaching physics for the first half term, and it's a subject that I disagree with a lot, and so I've decided to teach it, but also teach it from the angle of this is what they are teaching you, this is what they expect you, this is what they want you to think it's like, but give them an alternative perspective as well while I'm doing it. So, for example, the first topic is forces of motion, and you obviously have to start speaking about the forces like gravity and Newton's law and these things. And I'm very able to give them, just not to drum it into them, but just to give them a window into there are alternative perspectives, and this isn't the be all and end all. And so I've decided that is actually quite a privileged position to be in, because I'm thankful that my children, even though they will have to learn it to pass, you know, to get whatever academic achievements that they want to achieve, they learn it to get the certificate. At least they've been shown that there is a possibility that that isn't the truth. Right. Whereas it's never presented as a theory, whereas in fact it is the theory of gravity, the theory of relativity, you know. So it's nice to be able to do that, even though I was stressing about it quite a lot at first. But teaching is a profession where it needs passion, and a lot of teachers have lost that because they're stuck in the bureaucracy of it and in the fact that they're teaching things that can be harmful to their students. So obviously,
science, history, economics. Those are the ones. Those are the subjects right now that I'm questioning a lot.
They've moved it as well. They've also moved it into, for example, English literature. A lot of the English literature studies, they study it from the perspective of gender studies or critical, you know, grievance studies. So things are seen in a lens. You then analyze a text with regards to not with regards to what literary devices are being used or what the author is trying to convey. You're now seeing it as that author's identity, and basically seeing it through a lens of identity politics. So even English literature now, it's very few subjects that are unadulterated. And you know, I mainly teach maths, as you know, and I'm confident that maths in itself up to Key Stage 4 is pretty much okay, but I don't see, I can't name another subject that it hasn't been indoctrinated.
Yeah,
I honestly can't.
Okay,
possibly languages.
Yeah, of course,
Possibly languages.
Yeah, but even you say that, but if you really look into this aspect of legalities and law, you realize that the English language, it's split into two, isn't it? Now you've got legalese, which is the legal language, and then you've got the real language, like obviously, what is it? Do you remember we watched something on this? I mean, it'd be really good to share it with everybody. I think it was in that document about the straw man, and they were actually saying that certain words, you know, it has a different connotation, different meaning. So if you were to ever get stopped by the police, you shouldn't actually say I understand, because that has a completely, you're actually agreeing to be under their
stand under
them,
to stand under their authority,
right? So you hear a lot of truth that say interstand or
interstand or overstand.
Yeah, so again, like when you really think about language, even so, the point is that everybody has to really educate themselves, seek knowledge, seek it from the correct sources, seek it from it's all there. If you want to know it, you just need to know where to look, and you need to be willing to look for it. You're not going to find it on the BBC website or, you know, wherever else, Google. You're not going to find it there. So
I don't even know if it's all there, in so much as in so much as when you dig to find an alternative to the narrative, sometimes you just dig and find questions, but sometimes that in itself is liberating. You're liberated to the fact that sometimes you don't always know what the truth is, but at least you're not chained into the box and chained into one way of thinking, and that is believing that is the definitive answer. Because I don't think there is much of a definitive answer to many things. But I'm thankful to hear people's viewpoint. Like, I have my idea of what people say gravity is, but I'm not willing to say that I'm 100% sure that is what it is, especially because I'm not a scientist, but I do believe that makes more sense to me than what they call the force of gravity and their definition of it. Or, like, for example, alternative health, we know that a lot of medicines harm more than they heal, yet at the same time there are so many different paths of alternative medicine, and different ones work for different people.
But don't you think, sorry to cut you, but don't you think that's come from the indoctrination of the generation previous to us, so our parents' generation? I think, honestly, when I really think about it, I think their generation, it was almost like an assault on their whole way of thinking, their way of life. Many of them had come from organic, wholesome backgrounds, and everything. Like, even if you think about, I think about my children's grandmothers, both of them were taught, don't breastfeed your children. That's not the way to go now. You've got to formula feed your kids. That's going to be better for them, better for their health. And then slowly, the amount of vaccines, and it's just all increased over time. They were the ones that were actually pulled away from it, no?
I don't know, because that was the generation that went through the wars, isn't it? So I guess it depends what part of the world you were in as to what was, assaulted at that time. But yes, definitely a lot of that older generation are very quick to believe in authority. And maybe the authority at their time when they were growing was actually more trustworthy. And this is why they were easily led along. There's a few questions.
Yes.
There's a few questions on the chat. Would you like to go through a few of them?
Okay, so Sarah, we'll definitely put something up. We did
about law, legality, and common law.
So it's probably the Straw Man documentary. That one would be good.
That documentary is called The Nature of the Cage, and that's like my favorite documentary on the whole thing. There is many other talks and podcasts that you can find. With regards to common law, there is a website called commonlawcourt.com, and this is a UK court, and it's where you can register your birth certificate and claim back your lawful rights. They offer a lot of support. And
we are going back to common law, right, Hakimah? We are going back to common law.
Yes, it would seem. commonlawcourt.com, that's the one. Yes. And the YouTube documentary is called The Nature of the Cage. The Nature of the Cage, and that's a fantastic starting point. Sadly, the man that made that documentary passed away. I believe he was suicided, but his resources no longer function. But there are many other alternatives. So that was on Sarah's. Given the current situation, and then Shabana mentioned here, given the current situation and the subtle shift in that minds of people all around the world, do you think at some point in the future there may be changes in the subjects taught at school? Sophia.
I'm having a think of that one. I hope so. At the end of the day, whatever my kids learn at school, I always encourage them to come back and open dialogue with me, and we speak about it. From what I've heard, the medical system is changing. It's going to change. There's going to be release of something like 6,000 different patents. A lot of suppressed cures are going to be coming out into the open. A lot is going to come to light, and I think the penny's going to drop with many people as to how we've been lied to. I mean, if you think about it, the whole world's woken up, or at least it's come under the spotlight. Vaccines, vaccinations. People are talking about vaccinations this year, big time. All of us, you know, who have fought for the right to not have to vaccinate our children, or, you know, not conform to that, we've had a tough ride. It's a very lonely place to be when you're constantly being on this side of the fence and you're not wanting to conform and you don't want to do things, especially when you come from Asian families. I don't know how it is with your culture, Hakimah, but Asian families, there's an expectation. I mean, you know, your first child is born and everyone wants to say, everyone wants to know when their first appointment at the doctor's is, you know. So, you know, when you're having to actually, and I didn't actually know back then really why I didn't want to do it. All I knew is I don't want to do it. I just knew instinctively, I knew that it was not the right thing to do. And then the journey was great, but it was a lonely one at times. And
I'm very proud that you were able to stick through that. I had a lot less opposition. I just said I'm not doing it, and I didn't do it. Alhamdulillah, it was a lot easier for me. But to be able to, I mean, I had the medical profession on my back, but that was it. But to be able to stick to your guns when you're faced with opposition from family and friends and associates, as well as the medical profession, that takes a lot of strength.
it does. Alhamdulillah, but I think also it's also knowing, and you learn this as you get older. You don't always know how to do things in the right way when you're younger. You think you know it all, but really you don't. When you look back, you think, oh, I was a little bit hasty there, I was a little bit emotional. But it's really coming from a place of compassion, because everyone wants to think that they're doing the right thing. Parents that vaccinate, parents who don't vaccinate, none of us want bad for our kids. We all want to think and know, we all want to feel that we're doing the right thing. And even well-intending relatives and grandparents, they're coming from a place of fear, firstly, because they're taught that if you don't vaccinate your children or their grandchildren, the kids are going to get sick, right? It's dangerous. But they're coming from a place of compassion and care. And the advice I would give sisters who are maybe, you know, embarking upon this journey, come from a place of compassion. And the best thing you can do is to arm yourself with knowledge, empower yourselves with knowledge. That's what I say. And it's in regards to everything, whether that's, you know, parents who have arthritis or who are dealing with things like cancer. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult when you know a certain way. We know how much money the cancer industry actually generates. Billions. You know, nobody wants somebody to think, well, you know, I'll protect everybody, but nobody wants to think, well, if I get cancer, are there alternative methods of treatment? You know, first of all, let's talk about what changes are you going to make in your food and your lifestyle? How are you going to actually, you know, raise your immune system and your own health? Nobody wants to talk about that. It's all about, okay, well, you've got this, what we're going to do. And
there's also another, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. There's another issue here with regards to cancer and alternative medicines, alternative therapies, is a lot of the Western medical system, it involves around, you know, seeing the disease as an external entity to yourself. Whereas when you truly understand that the disease has happened because of your actions, and your actions are able to cure it. You know, maybe you developed a certain disease because, and I'm not talking about, you know, accidents and obviously, you know, these kind of things, but with regards to most health issues happen due to lifestyle choices, and most diseases are able to be reversed again from healthy lifestyle choices. And when you grasp that, you're able to take charge and to take your health into your own hands, and to, you know, through the will of Allah and the fadl of Allah, be able to cure most of your diseases, you know. But if you, it's a lot easier to rely on the Western model of things, because, say, for example, you've got cancer, seeing as we're on that. It's an external thing that's happened to you. You've got cancer. So many people in the world get cancer. It's not your fault. And then you hand yourself over to the medical establishment to do whatever cures on you, you know, to zap you, burn it, and you know, poison it out of you. And again, you don't have to take any responsibility. Whereas the true health comes from taking responsibility over your own self, what you put in your mouth, and your actions and your thoughts, your own emotions.
So yeah, 100%. So coming back to what Shabana asked in the text box, she said, do you think at some point in the future there may be changes in the subjects taught at school? So definitely yes, I think in terms of the medical industry, you know, med school and all that, it's all going to come from people empowering themselves to find the truth. Now, if you're asking about economics and if you're asking about history, my answer to that would be, well, I hope people wake up. I hope everything that's happened. I personally think that 2020 is such a phenomenal year. I know it seems like doom and gloom and there's a lot of negativity, but I actually think it's going to be looked back upon as such a phenomenal year that where the veil was lifted. The veil is being lifted. It's actually going to be a revolution for many people. A lot of people are going to wake up and want to willingly take themselves out of this system. I mean, look, all of a sudden you've got the schools are in disarray. Yeah, some parents are going to be looking at it as like, wow, this is really not great. But think how many people are actually going to sit there and think, well, you know what? We're questioning things. We're going to take our kids out of the system and we're going to maybe look at education in a different way. Maybe it can be done in a different way. So
they've actually reverted back, like your friend Iram was saying yesterday, they've reverted back to a Victorian way style of teaching where they had everybody at separate desks all facing the front. And this isn't how we have been teaching. We've been teaching very interactive with the children, you know, over the past decades. And to revert back to that is actually going to get a lot of people, I'm hoping it will get a lot of people questioning the system and, you know, questioning the caging of our children and, you know, the sausage factory that is the education establishment. But you've got another thing as well, is with the Q plan and the, you know, the project release of Tesla technology, when this does happen, you will have to have a re-education, because that resolves on, you know, that works on the magnetic fields, and there will be less, you know, need for electricity, and more about magnetism. So I mean, the true nature of science hopefully will be revealed. The true nature of health hopefully will be revealed, and hopefully we'll have an awakening, slowly but surely. But it will take time because of the indoctrination. The indoctrination runs really deep.
So hopefully everybody here has heard of the Q plan. I'm not sure if you want to say anything about that, Hakimah, but in terms of,
I think that's another Zoom call.
Yeah. So what's come out, I don't know if everybody's aware of this, is that the 5G towers are actually they're being converted to Tesla towers. And if you don't know who Tesla is, Nikola Tesla, it's, people kind of automatically hear the word Tesla and think of Elon Musk and electric cars. No, it's deeper than that. Tesla was the real hero, but instead it became all about Einstein and the other guy. Who's the other guy, Hakimah? Was it Einstein?
I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, coming back to Nikola Tesla, you know, a lot of his work was stolen. A lot of, you know, it was all about free energy, and it was unbelievable, some of the stuff. So anyhow, the word is that the 5G towers have been taken over. They're being converted to Tesla towers, and there'll be so much more. They'll be actually they're talking about being able to output 432 hertz energy, right? So I don't know if people are aware of this, but for example, music, the music industry, music has deliberately been weaponized. So the hertz or the vibration of music, the frequency of it, it's been lowered so that it actually causes more agitation in people. They become more susceptible to programming, negativity, fear, all of those things. But when you,
Anger.
sorry,
And anger as well.
and anger, agitation. So
Yeah.
when you change that frequency, and some cultures actually use vibrational energy to heal, to physically heal. So I think it's something like Tibetan cultures or something. It's not music, but they use certain kind of bowls, or I don't know. My daughter was telling me about this actually.
Tuning fork.
Yeah, that's
Certain
right.
forks where
Yeah,
they hit the forks and
tuning fork.
yeah.
That's right. So it can cause changes within the physiological aspect of your body, the cells and stuff like that. So this is what we're hearing. So things are really shifting. But a
I
lot of
think
people are
also,
not going to know about this.
I think the Q plan and this, I think we should save it for another call. But yes, that's the positive that's coming from the negative, because there is two different narratives going on with the truther communities at the moment. You have the doom and gloom about where people are waking up to the fact of Agenda 21 and the elite, the cabal, the deep state, the Illuminati, whatever name you want to use, their plan to take over humanity and enslave us all. And then you have and these people have been trying to expose that narrative. Like I said, David Icke has been on it for over 30 years, trying to expose the fact that the rulers of the world aren't who you see on mainstream media, and there's a lot of wickedness in the background that is controlling the whole thing. And he's been very comprehensively exposing who these people are. Not just him, there's many in the truth community that do the same thing. And then now, since 2017, you have a section of the truth community, and I believe that it's split. From what I see, people are split 50-50 on this, that believe that from this change now, you have some people fighting against it. And this is called the Q plan. And you will, that they are fighting against these evil people in the background. They call it the Third World War is actually going on as we speak, even though we're not having to physically fight in it. So maybe this is something that we should touch about, because there is evidence to show that it is in place.
Okay.
Maybe there's something we should go into.
Okay. So
there's a lot in that, isn't there? There's a lot to unpack.
there's a lot. There's a lot. Okay, so we don't want to drag this on for too long. I think today was just generally kind of start it, see where it goes. Well, inshallah, we'll plan another one. But before we kind of wrap up a little bit, do you guys want to ask any questions? Are there any questions?
There is a couple of questions on there from Anna. I don't know who's shortened their name to Nah. It's quite nice, mashallah. She says, could you please give some references for where to search these subjects, please? I'm homeschooling and buying books that have these teaching and would like to have sources where to look, please. Okay, so this is the thing, is that you fall into so many rabbit holes when you start searching alternatives, that every subject itself has a rabbit hole. We call rabbit holes when you start researching a topic and you scratch underneath the surface and you see how far it is that you can fall, how many different layers there are to what the subject is teaching. That's called a rabbit hole. So you have, for example, the alternative health, you have the government law. There's so many rabbit holes, even to the point of feminism, and alhamdulillah is too many rabbit holes. So you would have to, as you're going along and you realize that what is in the curriculum, this is what I did with my children, because I homeschooled for very many years, but as I learned more myself, and as I distrusted the educational system anyways, as I went along and I found something that disagreed with myself and disagreed with what I knew to be true, I would teach my children what was in the curriculum, but tell them that I disbelieved it. I didn't think that that was true, and I would show them alternatives through what I had done as my own research. I would only teach them, and I would teach them the curriculum, saying to them, this is what they expect you to write in the exams. But I don't believe that to be true. What is your view on gravity? My view on gravity is that there isn't a force of gravity where something of a higher mass, that where objects attract each other. This is what their view is of gravity, that objects attract each other. I don't believe that. I believe it's not gravity, it's density. So the things that are more dense, the objects that are more dense sink, and objects that are less dense float. Just like in water, wood floats because it's less dense, and a stone would fall because it's more dense. If there are atoms, the atoms or particles would be, you know, tighter, packed together. This is my view on gravity, that's what it is. It works the same, you know, in the atmosphere of the Earth as it does, you know, underwater. Do you have any documentary on Agenda 21? No, but Agenda 21 has. Do you have any, Sophia? Do you have?
No.
Do you know about?
No.
Agenda 21 is probably, David Icke would probably be a good resource on that. But
I find with David Icke, however much I love David Icke, listening to David Icke, I do sometimes despair a little bit with David Icke. I find that he can make me feel a little bit negative, a little bit of doom and gloom. I'm not sure why. What do you agree with me, Hakimah, on this?
Yes, I do agree. The reason he is negative is because, like I said, the truth movement is split 50-50. And as David Icke doesn't buy into the Q plan and doesn't agree that there is any positivity going on, he's still very much on trying to wake people up to the fact that they are being enslaved. And so this is where the negativity is coming from. So yes, I agree, and I'm hoping that he will see the signs that this Q movement is different to other psyops that he's spoken about in the past.
Then you've got people such as Piers Morgan, you know, coming on in mainstream, and like you mentioned this morning, it's really difficult when you've got these loud voices shouting people down, you know, using these words like psyop, but using it in a very dangerous context. I almost feel that there's so much kind of like what surrounds these words that we have a completely different meaning, and they
Yes.
take it and they run somewhere else with it.
Yes, I couldn't. I tried to watch that. I've been trying to watch it for a couple of days because I've heard so much about it. I struggle so much to watch interviews like that because my heart goes out to the person that is being, for use of my son's word, is being violated as they're being shouted down and spoken over, and they're just there as a symbol of stupidity rather than because people actually want to hear their voices. And what they're doing is they're degrading all of us that have any alternative view on anything. So
But
whether you have an alternative view on health or education or law, they're belittling everybody with an alternative opinion. That's
it was
why
like
I found
when
it.
Dr. Buttar was initially coming out, and I really do enjoy listening to Dr. Buttar, and I value what he brings to the table in terms of his knowledge and his experience. And when he was initially coming out in April and speaking against the CDC, speaking against vaccines, or, you know, pro-choice, if you want to sort of call it that, and he was speaking about Dr. Fauci and what the NIH was saying, and, you know, everyone else, the WHO. So I would update what I felt was right and correct, and people were generally open to it, but a few sisters or individuals would say, well, I don't value what they say, but I said, but it's what they're presenting is very logical, very practical. It's scientific. And what you'd get back is, no, well, they've discredited themselves. Dr. Buttar discredited himself because all he's really doing is pushing the Trump agenda. It's all about President Trump. It's not about anything else. He's been paid to say this, follow the money. But then you're going to listen to somebody like Piers Morgan and, not question him. Somebody who clearly is only doing what he's doing because he's following his money.
He's being paid. He's being paid.
Right.
I loved Dr. Buttar. I was so thankful when he became a voice to speak out, because he was Muslim, and 100%. We could direct our brothers and sisters to one of their own.
Yeah,
but still, like this.
But still, when you're saying, well, it's a brother. It's a brother. He's talking for us. He's talking from, this place of passion. He's talking from a place of, his own child was affected by vaccines or whatever it is.
Yes. But he was vaccine damaged. He displayed signs of autism, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you feel that the thing with that when you switch off the mainstream media and you start listening to alternative voices, and you start listening to your own voice, it becomes clear who is speaking truth. And I'm not talking, again, ultimate truth. I'm talking about their own truth. You can feel the truth coming from people. You can feel that they're speaking from their hearts. You can connect with this. And this is a blessing. You don't see that in mainstream media. When you look at mainstream media, what you see is you see superficiality. You don't see anyone connecting from the heart.
No substance.
And there's no substance. Whereas Dr. Rashid Buttar, you listen to him, you can feel it. The old man in the chair, what's the doctor called now?
What's this doctor?
Vernon Coleman.
That's it.
Oh, I love him so much. He's come off YouTube now, but when he speaks, even though he's speaking from a script that he's written, you feel his words. You feel the truth and the gravity in what he's saying. You feel the authenticity.
And then you've got Robert Kennedy. Jr.
Oh, he's amazing. Again, you feel the sincerity, and you don't get this from the media or the TV, that are just speaking things that they don't even believe themselves.
Yeah, the sad thing is that you present all of these people who instinctively, if you really listen and you still yourself, you still your thoughts and any kind of preconceptions, and you listen and you can actually feel that this is the truth, but still you get those individuals who say, well, you know what, it means nothing. It's not in mainstream media.
Yes.
It means nothing. It's not been reported by the BBC.
Yes. Okay, coming back to the chat. Sarah said it's really hard for people to change everything they've learned for centuries. 100%. She started going through the path of Unani Tib, and it's absolutely all about reconnect to the creator and a healthy lifestyle, good sleep, good food, eat less. Fantastic. Documentary Agenda 21, we touched on that. I think you could actually...
Sorry, can I just stop you? Can I just stop you for 1 second? And I just want to go back to the question you just spoke about. It's not just connecting to a healthy lifestyle, good sleep, good food, and eating less. It is, but I would involve more things in that healthy lifestyle. It's also about being able to speak your truth. And it's also hugely on how you process your own emotions. This whole period, where people have been so down and so depressed and so lost. Some people you speak to, they're so lost. How that is all, and not being able to even process your thoughts and emotions, that can have a huge impact on your health. Had I been one of these people who started to kind of speak out, and people were shutting me down, and I said, you know what, because I'm being shut down, I'm not going to say anything. By me suppressing my truth and suppressing my real feelings and emotions, I would have made myself more sick. I'd have made myself sick, full stop. And I have to also include in those 3 things that you said, good sleep, good food, eat less, it's also being authentic to yourself and to others. 100%.
100. Yes. I've only learnt this recently. Authenticity, me having been shut down as, you know, a conspiracy theorist all these years, has been very detrimental to myself, to me as a person, because always I've had it in the back of my mind and never been able to speak it. And it's actually been very healing for me to be able to speak to people and speak about these topics. And I'm, you know, that's why I opened it saying that I'm thankful, because this is an authentic part of myself that I'm very thankful that I have people that will not shut me down for it. And I'm happy to have debates and arguments, and, you know, not arguments but discussions about it. I'm not saying I know the ultimate truth, and I'm happy to and open to evidence, but I'm just being authentic is incredibly important to one's well-being. 100%.
100%.
Sister's asking, where did you derive your understanding on gravity? It makes sense to me what you're saying. I did my research on flat earth and alternative force. You know, I'll tell you something. I actually first started questioning gravity when I was a teenager, because I used to watch a program called Third Rock from the Sun, if anybody remembers it. And it was about aliens, you know, masquerading on Earth. And one of them mentioned about, you know, stupid humans, they still believe in gravity, and they chuckled. And I knew at that time about predictive programming, and it made me think, gravity isn't real. I had an epiphany. I was probably about 15, and I knew then. I thought, do you know what? Gravity isn't real. So recently, my thoughts on it have changed over time. But only recently, probably 2016-17, I came across that idea, or I put that idea into testing it out. You know, I like to test out theories and see how they sit with me. I've been chewing on that one for a while, but I don't remember where I first heard of it. But one of my favorite resources for flat Earth, oh, his name has slipped. Sophia, do you remember Francesco where he told you to look?
No, sorry. Maybe we can get back to
it will come back.
after.
It will come back.
If anyone wants
Yeah.
to know, just ask us afterwards.
Yeah, I'll try and remember it before we end up the talk. It's a fantastic YouTube channel on it. He's got great resources on flat Earth and even Holocaust denial. He's and dinosaurs, about alternative perspective on dinosaurs. Okay, what's going on with 5G towers? I believe, Sophia, you caught that one.
Yep. How true is the Q plan? How true is the Q plan?
Can we do that in another video? In another
yeah, that's a big
because I believe that one's quite long. What are the best suggestions for us as mothers? I believe openness would be my best piece of advice, and something like to teach your children to be open and inquisitive, and to not shut down any of their thoughts or suggestions by ridicule.
And absolutely the best way to teach your children as parents is to converse with them, listen to them, make them understand that their voices and their opinions are valued. Ask for their opinions. I don't really hide what I think about anything with my kids, but I don't say to them, look, you have to agree with me. I ask them to also ask questions, dig for themselves. Obviously, you don't want to let them loose on Google. You don't want that either, but just speak to your children. I mean, with me, what I will say is, since March, I've not allowed them to prescribe to the fear mongering. It's been quite difficult because with their, you know, the other family, they all are very much they live in that state of fear, and I don't blame them. They all listen to the news all the time. There's newspapers coming in and out the house all the time. So my kids go there and they question. So I don't tell them, well, this is right and they are wrong. No, I kind of bring it from a perspective that, look, I don't listen to the news because I don't believe everything that they're telling us, and this is what I think and this is what I believe. Now, what do you think? Kids at the end of the day just want to be kids. They don't want to be sitting there picking up on your fear and your, you know, negativity. You know, a sister was speaking to me the other day and saying that her child, he's really picked up on a lot of the negativity and the fear, and she feels really bad because it's almost like she can't undo it now, and he's constantly washing his hands, and he feels really, you know, she feels bad about it. It was sad to hear that. So all I can say is, look, at the end of the day, kids pick up on your vibe. They pick up on how you're feeling. Just stay positive. Just don't prescribe to that fear, and just speak to them. Have fun. Have fun.
Yeah.
Kids want to be kids. They don't stay kids for long. Just
No.
have fun with them.
And the point about childhood is not having responsibility and exploration. So we don't stifle it, don't stifle their sense of fun, and allow them to explore intellectually as well as, you know, in their environment and you know, their own selves, not to stifle their need for exploration, because it's scary, it's dangerous, you know. Okay, how much optimistic are you regarding the COVID business will come to an end in a positive way for the people, to go back to our normal and not the new normal, inshallah? Bi'idhnillah, it will be better than where we were.
I believe that.
It will be better. And again, this comes back to the Q plan, so we will touch on that another day.
Can I just say something, please? And this is something that we spoke about last week, and it's about us Muslims. We love each other. We love the Ummah. We love our Muslim brothers and sisters. But I was feeling a little sad one day when I was speaking to Hakimah, and I said that I feel that Muslims as a people, we are programmed to be quite negative and full of doom and gloom. And I believe that more than anyone, we should be the ones who are so positive and have so much faith in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing, and the plan that he has, not just for us, but for the whole of humanity. Because it's very easy to go, well, look at the Muslims here, and look at the Muslims in this country, look how they're being oppressed here and there. But when you really sit back and look at everything that's been going on for decades, you actually start to understand it's not just the Muslims who've suffered, it's the whole of humanity who have been enslaved on every level, not just physically, but in every sense, our psyche, you know, our children. Yes. And that's what, and I really wish for this, that us Muslims, we really are the ones who kind of come forward and say, you know what, there is hope, there's going to be hope. And we should be like that. We should have good thoughts of our Lords. And I don't want people, you know, you get a lot of kind of, well, you know what, the world's going to pot anyway, it's the end of the world, and it's this and it's that.
Yes.
No.
And one generation is going to be the worse, and it's all going to get worse and worse and worse. No, alhamdulillah, we have to be positive, and we have to try and to radiate that positivity, and so we don't drag everybody down, because I do think there is a lot of truth in that. You manifest what your reality is. You manifest your own reality. So if you put out negativity, this is what you're going to create. And bi'idhnillah, we need to be positive and create that positivity amongst ourselves and our communities.
Yeah, I mean, we know this. We know that you're positive, and you spring out of bed, and you just have to sit there and say, you know what, I'm actually living in a state of abundance. Look at this. I've got a roof over my head. I have my health, alhamdulillah. I've got my children. Whatever you feel is your blessing in that moment, you have to actually focus on that. We can't actually come from that place of doom and gloom and lack, because you're just going to have more of an impact on your mental health, your emotional health, and it just has a domino effect. So honestly,
and this is a principle of the deen, and
yes,
gratitude and is a principle of the deen, and it brings abundance in the deen. If you are grateful, Allah says, I will give you more.
Yes. And that's why I honestly, wholeheartedly, 100% believe that inshallah, it's going to be amazing for our children and their children, inshallah. I mean, obviously we know that evil can rear its head again and things can go wrong again. But you know what? We don't focus on that. We cross that bridge if and when. That may be a challenge for our grandchildren or their children. Allah knows best. But right now, honestly, I believe that good things are coming. Good things are coming for humanity, not just the Muslims, but the whole of humanity.
Bismillah. Okay. There's one sister's asking about a beer. Sorry. What can we do for vaccines needed for Hajj and Umrah?
Well, I think
Especially when we already. Are there any ideas to avoid them? Is fake certificates okay in this situation to protect our health and our children?
I think, I mean, that's quite a long discussion for me personally, just simply because I've always been somebody that I wouldn't vaccinate anyway. I'd rather go to the airport and just kind of go, well, from what I know, they're not really that big on checking, but I think a lot of changes are going to come from this. I mean, the whole world, the spotlight on vaccines and vaccinations, it's huge at the minute. You know, people who usually are the first ones to line up for the flu vaccine, those same people that I discuss and I have discussions with are saying, well, no way are we having vaccines anymore. You know, consciousness is shifting, thinking, thought, it's shifting. So let's see. I'm hoping that things will change.
That sounds amazing. That's amazing. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, maybe we
Yes.
can have another discussion on this in another
I
chat. But
believe that's the end of the questions.
yes.
Please share this recording. I need to, Barakallahu fikum barakallah. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Jazakallah khair to everyone. You know where we are. If you want us to discuss anything else specifically, or if any of you want to actually contact me and have a discussion with me, I'd love it. I know a lot of you sisters, you do sometimes, you know, you contact me with questions and you know, we talk about things, and some of the things we discuss, it's really quite good, really exciting. So if anyone wants to contact any of us, either of us or both of us together, be more than happy. Or brothers. I won't discriminate.
Especially as there's many topics we haven't explored yet. For example, the main one that comes to my mind is Pizzagate and adrenochrome, and you know, these heavy topics that.
And also, there are a lot of brothers in the community who know a lot about what's happening with the current financial reset.
Financial reset.
And I'd love to kind of share what I've learned about it, because we should actually be thinking, what can we do right now to save money or invest money? So if there's anyone who wants to have a discussion with us about that, that would be great.
Very open to that. Very thankful if anybody can contribute to that one as well. Bismillah, yes, we'll wind it up here, inshallah.
Okay. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.